With us more, yeah? Okay, let's go. The people who us, the people lie to us, the government betray us, so much. I said they lie. The people who us, the people lie to us, the government betray us. They can lie, they can steal, they will knock the ball. I said we tired with their lies. We tired with their promises that left us to all our damages. We tired with that speech they preach indeed, and now unique they deceive us. The thing we saw, it frustrates us. So why can't you lie? Why can't you steal? Why can't you allow the citizens to be? You see, we just tell you that why we voted you. But you fool us, you screw us, you use us and later on abuse us. So why? The government should lie. Why? But that's the question that we
ask. Hey, okay.
Good afternoon, George. How are you?
Good, what's up?
I'm good. Good afternoon to our listening audience who respond as fast as possible. Want to say I apologize for starting a little late, but a lot of different things are going on. So, but we're just happy to be here. Wednesday, June 15th, 2022. A lot of people are not with us. Some of them left us just a moment ago. So anytime we are here, we should thank God. We should be happy, even though my man here would thank a different purpose. But
I'm not a God thinking person. Okay, I'm not.
Yeah. So I believe we probably talked about this little topic before. That's really touching a lot of people. And now there will be a civil society group supposedly protesting tomorrow against the actions of the finance minister Samuel Tuo regards to his control of the economy, his control of the people's funds and everything. And the spark plug for this particular incident happens to be the situation with the road fund. So are you familiar with what has happened with the road fund?
Well, I know that it didn't make the deposits that were required by law.
Exactly.
And I don't know that their answer they have acquitted themselves at all.
Right. So nobody really believes that. And I believe the finance minister came on a show, I think with Spoon TV, where he tried to obfuscate, kind of confuse on the point. Instead of focusing on what was really happening, he tried to focus on the audit. So whether the audit was qualified or non-qualified, or unqualified, it doesn't matter, because the fact is it was clearly documented in terms of what transpired with the funds.
Mm-hmm.
They had a certain amount of monies collected for 2018, 2019, and for 2019, 2020. And in 2018, 2019, I believe there were 9.9 million that they were supposed to remit that they didn't, that they held on to, and they probably used for different purposes. In 2019, 2020, there was an additional 14 million that they could not account for again. So nearly 25 million that was not accounted for. They claimed they used $7 million for salaries or from some other government purpose. But the whole process speaks of misuse, misallocation of government funds. So, in general, what are your thoughts on these kind of practices and how they affect the larger picture?
Well, again, our problems are the same. Our problems never change. Our problems are problems of of people of no systems of accountability. Okay, no systems that can automatically raise red flags. Okay, no dashboards available to the legislature or legislators who will be able to see that, you know, there's a deadline that these deposits should be made, that they're not being made. The only time we find these things out is if somebody blows a whistle. By that time, it's been happening for 6 months.
True.
And if you want to make sure that nobody blows a whistle, you just take care of everybody.
And again, so, and sometimes even when they get aware of these things, there's a reluctance to act, because part of the civil society protest that may go on is going to be against the legislators, right? They finally got the president pro tem of the Senate, Abache, to make a comment on the issue, because they were accusing the legislature of being protective and having gotten brown envelopes of like 15,000 each. It seems like 15,000 is the super number.
Is the going price.
Yes, is the going price for anything.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, they got this 15,000 each to suppress anything around this. And he came out and said, nope, they have not received any money with regards to that misappropriation. So if you look at him, that means he's basically saying there was a misappropriation and he's agreeing with it. But
right,
even if it was on time, let's say a month after it happened, how does that still prevent like a corrupt finance minister from still doing that, knowing that it's going to happen, and then he deals with it? So, but that's the mindset.
Again, Isaac, if you can't put in the required systems of trust, the systems of accountability, you're going to be stuck by trust, and where you have to trust an individual. And that's the problem we have. We don't have any systems to flag these transactions. You could build a system that has a built-in feedback that says if the money is not deposited on this date, you need to flag somebody, and then a week later you need to escalate it.
Get an exception report.
Yeah. You can build those systems.
No, I mean they can be built, and even whatever the financial system they have in terms of remittances to different government agencies.
I'm sure those can be built also.
Or they're probably already inbuilt. If it's any financial management system, that kind of system should already be in place.
It should already be there. The problem is that there's no commitment in the government, and there's just no commitment by the Liberian people.
And wait. You know, people say that. What should the people do?
So here's my thing. All right. Every time we seem to have these discussions, when we get to the layman, there is no overwhelming demand that these systems be put in place. So let me give you an example. You're going to protest at the legislature tomorrow. What are you protesting?
Ministry of Finance.
Ministry of Finance. Are you protesting that they do it?
I believe they are protesting for the firing of the finance minister. And
okay, so fine. But even if they fire the finance minister,
it's not a solution.
That problem doesn't go away.
It doesn't. The next finance minister can come
and do the same thing.
So part of it too is the understanding. Yes, I know you said it's only Liberian people, but many people don't understand the solutions to these things, for one. And sometimes they don't understand the negative impact it has on us long-term as a people. And for, financial systems, complex as is. The layman probably doesn't understand the movement of financial activities, transactions, and stuff like that most times. So how do we get to break this thing down to people in the simplest way of how corruption affects them? Because it seems like either we are totally desensitized about the impact of corruption, or because some people have maybe a mindset, I'm gonna say corrupt too, so that the people on the time. I mean,
so
how do we get across this problem?
So, one of the, I think I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and I was talking about Franklin Roosevelt's inauguration speech. I believe it was in 1941.
About then, during World War period.
Where he said there are four things, where he outlined what he called the four freedoms. Freedom from fear, freedom from want, freedom of speech, and there was something else. But for Liberia, it's not about freedom of speech. I think we have that, more or less.
Yeah, you have the freedom, but there's repercussions when people speak, though.
Okay, but for Liberia, I think the most critical thing that is lacking, and that is a part of the fuel of this cycle of corruption, is the freedom from want. When people are desperately poor, like I told somebody, I mean, I have a Jeep that has a 24-gallon tank. So my fuel light came on and I went to fill my tank. And the cost to fill my tank has gone up now from $80
to $120 probably.
To about $130, $140.
There you go.
Okay. But spending $130 at the pump did not leave me destitute because I just put it on my credit card. So I make this point to say that when you talk about freedom from want, the average Liberian wakes up every morning and they have to wonder, what am I going to eat today? What am I going to feed my children? How am I going to send them to school? This is something that happens to them every single day. There is no person in America who wakes up and says, I have no idea what I'm going to eat. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when you have people who are that desperately poor, those people 10 times out of 10 will turn a blind eye to corruption because it allows them a way to eat. If the minister walks into a group of people and gives each one of them $5, they're okay with it. You understand what I'm saying?
And they don't tend to understand the significance or the
here's the thing. It's hard to ask somebody to understand something when they're hungry, when their children are hungry. Yeah, I understand it, but you know what? I've got to feed my children today. So, when we talk about how do we rebuild this society, I think it's a question of what do we establish as a baseline for people to just function as citizens. And they have to move away from that freedom from want.
Yeah, the freedom from want is very, very prevalent. It compromises people, and they will allow them to support something they will not support under normal circumstances.
Exactly.
I mean, go ahead.
Even if you look at the countries that have had revolutions, it's very, very rare that it's the poor people who are leading the revolution. You understand? Nelson Mandela was not a pauper. He was a trained lawyer. Fidel Castro was a trained lawyer. Che Guevara was a trained physician. These were people who had, even in the people who came from to bring revolution to Liberia. Barcus Matthews was the grandson of James Spriggs Payne. I guess you didn't know that, did you?
I knew you had some connection. I didn't know he was like a presidential descendant. No,
he was a descendant. He was a grandson of James Spriggs Payne. So at the end of the day, you know, it wasn't Flomo who was leading the revolution. These were people who went to bed with a stomach full every night and never had to worry.
Because even at LU, Weeks and them used to write those
Exactly.
Yes. So,
you know, Weeks's father was foreign minister. He was president of the University of Liberia. These were not hungry people.
No.
It's very hard to ask a hungry person to lead a revolution. And so at the end of the day, you know, for all the change we want, I think one of the fundamental things that we have to understand is that it's going to be difficult to change the mindset of people whose very existence is questioned today.
And that viability is dependent on corruption. The fact that some kind of big shot can have some kind of money in their pocket to be able to hand them some meager dollars for them to
$2. You go to Liberia and you give somebody 50 liberty. They're grateful for it. How much is 50 liberty?
It's not even 20 cents. I don't think at this point with the exchange rate, maybe 30
Okay,
cents.
let's say it's 100 liberty. They would still be grateful for it.
So how do we start this mindset change? Because this is a movement that has to happen. People have to believe there's something at the end of that particular effort for them to even get vested into it or to even start to consider it. And at this point, I don't know that majority of our people really feel there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, so again, we still, you know, the challenges that we have are significant. And I think I think the opposition, okay, has to find a way to crystallize its message. You know, one of the issues that I have with ANC is that it doesn't own its own airwaves. So when you live in a country where all of the broadcast media can be purchased or sanctioned, if you don't own your own, then whatever it is you're trying to say can be purchased or sanctioned.
But likewise, if you own your own, it can be sanctioned too, but at least own it. I'm in total agreement with you.
So let's look at Costa. Let's look at Costa. Every effort by the Sirleaf government to sanction Costa met with international rebuke.
Yeah, but let's look at Costa in the we are government. What happened? They assaulted his location.
Right, but guess what?
What?
He has still built enough of a following, right? So that people listen to him every day. My point is, you have to control your message.
Without question, I'm in total agreement with that. I've been pushing that agenda. Hopefully
there are so many people who have reached out to me a week, 2 weeks after about this little 1 hour talk that we do. And what I'm finding is this is something that people want to hear.
Well, people
they need to hear, but it has to be heard consistently.
Exactly. That's why we try to see how we can be consistent.
You know,
people need to hear independent messages, you know, like factual stuff, hardcore stuff.
Correct.
It may not resonate with them early or immediately, but at some point, it's
at least they're willing to listen. They're willing to listen.
Yeah.
And if they're willing to listen, so, my appeal to the ANC is that you got to get your own broadcast network. You can't go into the election hoping and praying that out of the goodwill
of the government,
of the other people who are broadcasters, because whatever it is you can pay, they can pay more because it's not their money.
That's a fact.
Okay, whatever you think you can pay, they can pay more, and they can also sanction. You see what I'm saying?
And one thing we've talked about, like during the early time, we needed, according to the law, you should have equal time on public radio, like ELBC.
So I would just tell you this: I'm one of those people who's not a proponent of public radio, of a government-run propaganda network. I'm not.
I agree. It shouldn't be there, but it's there. It's in greenhouse society, and they use it significantly.
And there has never been a time in the history of Liberia where ELBC people have been given equal time.
No, never. Never
been a time. So I'm saying, listen, the ANC message is not going to get through on Facebook.
No, it's not enough.
Message is not going to get through on Twitter. Okay? You need a message in Vi. You need a message in Gola. You need a message in Bassa. You need a message in Gio. You need a message in
every dialect, basically.
Every dialect.
You do.
Okay. You need that message. And my thing is, you're running out of time, because by the time you put in the infrastructure, you're probably 6 months from the election.
Again, George, I'm in total agreement. It's something the ANC has to work on. It's something the opposition in general has to work on.
And as a part of that, you can have these educational programs like we're trying to do now.
And you see, that's what I'm saying. This stuff does not have to be all about politics. But if you can enlighten the minds of the people on what the issues are, why things are the way they are, what are possible solutions, what's the profile of people who can provide solutions, what are the characteristics and qualities of somebody who can be your lawmaker and be able to make a difference for you, that people can start to think, not to the level of critical thinking maybe somebody who has all the exposure and experience has, but at least within their frame of need and their frame of scope in terms of who the leader is, they can start to understand, what do I want from this person?
And start to understand what the role of government actually is.
Exactly.
Because I'll give you an example. There's a very well-educated Liberian named Dr. Dennis. He's a mathematician. Chris Dennis.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we've been having this ongoing discussion about development in Liberia. And my position has been, it's the government's responsibility. His position has been, when private people from the diaspora need to come and build the country. And so I pointed out to him, in the history of Liberia, in the 1970s, the early 70s, the USAID paid for the construction of the Monrovia Consolidated School System.
Yes.
Okay? They paid for Matilda Newport Junior High, which was on Newport Street.
Right.
They paid for Boatswain, which was across the bridge. They paid for G.W. Gibson. Okay? And they paid for Tubman High.
Right.
And basically, that whole model was meant to model the school system of an American city, where you had the elementary schools, you had the junior high schools, and then you have everybody going to the high school, which was Tubman High, which could have 1,500 students or something like that.
Right.
Outside of that, since the 70s, you cannot point me to 10 schools that the government of Liberia has built.
But it's been
Hold
agreed.
on. But hold on now.
Okay.
So you got somebody who's saying, well, private people need to do this. And the point I was making to him is the Episcopal Church, right?
The Catholic Church.
CWA, Our Lady of Fatima, Bishop Bishop Ferguson. You got the Episcopal Church, St. John, Bethany, all of those high schools across Liberia. You got the Catholic Church, St. Patrick's Convent, Our Lady of Fatima in Tepamas. You got the Carol High. You got the Methodist Church, right?
Yes.
Yes, the Episcopal Church or B.W. Harris.
Right.
You got the Methodist Church that is responsible for CWA, Methodist.
You don't even have to list all the schools. We know how
Right.
fundamental the churches have been in trying to provide education.
So all of those were private efforts.
Yes.
That's the point I was making to him. These were non-government efforts.
And that's why my position is kind of a mix of the two of yours. But the primary responsibility is the government. The government negotiates all our concessions. The government collects the taxes. The government collects royalties. The government is responsible to provide education for its people. And
so let's go to hospitals.
Oh my God, the worst.
Okay, so 1971, USAID again paid to construct a JFK.
Yes.
It took another 40 years for Liberia to get another referral hospital, and that was a gift from China. So in a 40-year span, the government of Liberia had not constructed any hospital that could be called a hospital. Even when ECOMOG came, they had to build their own redemption hospital. Okay, but again, these are private efforts. And for the people who are saying private people need to do it, I'm saying private people have been doing it for the last 70 years. And the system has still fallen short. Okay, and the point you made that the government as the fiduciary is the one responsible for all of the permitting, for all of the agreements to make these things happen.
Right.
Okay, so at the end of the day, we need to be able to educate the people of Liberia that the government has a responsibility.
And that's what
so
I talk about with civics.
When you talk about the road construction fund, okay, one of the things that I have said is let's set up a health and education trust fund. But if you're doing this with the road construction fund, you're going to do the same thing with the healthcare and education trust fund.
But look at what they're doing with the global fund that the people provided.
Right.
They're stealing the money too.
We have to get people to understand that the things that we need cannot be provided by private people.
No.
And that, I think, is something else that is at the core of the mindset of a lot of the Liberian people.
Right.
They believe that they absolve the government of its responsibilities.
Totally, absolutely.
And they expect, and so even when you look at these people who are on here, some of them would say, well, what have you done for Liberia? Nothing. It's not my job. It's not my job. You elected a government to do these things for you, to build roads, to build schools, to build hospitals. Why then should I come along and say, guess what? The government doesn't have to do all of those things. I'm going to do it for them. When the government has to simply take money that is being collected for a road fund, and they're stealing that money, and you're not going to get the maintenance on the roads.
And part of this civic responsibility or civic education is also about advocacy. Many of our people, whether is that they're so beat down, or probably the syndrome you're talking about in terms of waiting for the handouts from those who can give it, who are the one that the perpetrators and violators, whether it's the Stockholm syndrome, whatever it is, our people don't seem to naturally advocate, demand, protest, demonstrate for the right causes. It's like somebody has to pay them or they have to light fire on it. So that realization, that understanding of the social contract and what the obligation is from government is so missing. It's so missing, and we have to teach it. But many in the opposition don't feel it's their responsibility either.
Because a lot of people in the opposition, and I think because I'm looking right now at a guy who says the people in the Southeast are sitting on 200,000 ounces of gold and all of that. Guess what? That money's going to be stolen. And here's why. I said to you all before that the way the government is structured, it's a divide and conquer government.
True.
Basically, the political subdivisions don't work. Many of them are too small. They don't have any autonomy.
And they don't have any power, not even on paper. They don't have any power.
All of these contracts are negotiated in Monrovia. So if we are willing to expand our mind and say, let's reorganize our political structure. And instead of having 15 subdivisions, where places like Grand Cru have 17 citizens, and of the 17, they got 2 are senators, 2 are representatives. Okay, so, let's reorganize the government so that maybe we have 3 subdivisions. And then we can demand that we have autonomy in the government, where all of that money that comes out of Grand Cru, out of the Southeast, stays in the Southeast.
Or the majority stays there at least, because there'll be something given for central management. But
so you're talking about 200. You're talking about at least $200 million here. Okay, in terms of the amount.
No, but I think he said 100.
No, it's 200,000. Gold is $1,000 an ounce.
Okay, then it's 200 million. Yeah,
it's $200 million.
Yeah.
So even if you said 150 million, even if you said of the $200 million, the central government would get 25% of that.
But at the rate these artisanal miners, these
we don't know what they're taking.
Chinese meat. That's what I'm saying. The exploitation is huge. We don't even know what's coming out of B Mountain, what's coming out of some of those other people down there in the Southeast who are mining.
The way the state is structured, everything has to go through Monrovia. Just like we're seeing, or just like we talk about the fact that education has always been a private effort in Liberia, and we can point to it and say that private effort has not worked. It can only do so much.
Right.
Okay. Let's look at all of these concession agreements. There was a time when the mountain at Nimba provided more than 60% of Liberia's GDP.
Yes.
You cannot make an argument as to why Seneca is not as developed as Monrovia.
But George, I know you heard about Wieswa before, right?
Yes.
That was like the diamond capital of Liberia.
Exactly.
We went to that town. That town is destitute and desolate.
But people are digging diamonds, and guess what? The money is all going to Monrovia. Again, unless we divide the country into 3 major political subdivisions and demand that all of these concession agreements, that 75% of that money is repatriated to that subdivision. So now you're not demanding that the government has to pay to build schools in the Southeast, because you got $150 million just from this project alone.
That's a fact. So there's another point.
Okay.
Which is kind of mixed with what I'm saying, but it seems like he wants to put the onus on the people from the diaspora move. So Dwalu, I don't know whether you're there. If you want to come on and explain this a little bit more, you can definitely come on. But I do think more has to come from the diaspora myself, for the level and quality of people in the diaspora, but their lack of hands-on involvement with Liberia, it really limits things happening. It limits the role models that the young people can see. It limits the mentoring that can happen if folks were interested in some of these young people. It limits the opportunity to sometimes co-invest or to just guide from a strategic direction with some of these young people who are saying entrepreneur stuff, or just from a career perspective, because you see some of them like kind of all over the place. They don't know what to do, which direction to go. And, somebody like you, just imagine if you have 5 or 6 kids in a little chat room, young people that you can just really engage with. They say they want to do IT. You let them know IT is a big field. What specific part of IT do you want to improve?
But at least learn the basics. At least teach them the basics.
The fundamentals.
Okay? Yeah. And then they can decide where they want to go. So at the end of the day, Dwalu, I understand that. But, even when I look at Liberians in the diaspora, many of them don't necessarily have the conviction for Liberia.
Fact.
Okay? Many of them want to go back to Liberia and work in government.
Fact.
And be ministers. They don't want to work in private industry. They don't want to shape the structure of private industry. Okay? They don't want to make an even playing field.
No. People, why do we feel so entitled, George?
So let me give you an example. Akaris Gray recently posted pictures of him and his bride-to-be dining off the Champs-Élysées, wedding in Paris. When you are, and Sam Jackson tried to say, well, he makes money, he can get married anywhere. That's not the point. The point is, you are a legislator from the 3rd poorest country in the world. The people in your district, of whom 10 years ago you were one of, don't even have running water. And you are going to Paris to have your wedding, and you're doing it in such a public and ostentatious way, as if to suggest that, there's just nowhere in Liberia that's good enough for me to get married. But I'm one of the people who's supposed to be making Liberia good enough.
You see, Akaris may not understand the optics. Sam does, but Sam is kissing butt.
But it's not just Sam. This other guy named Jerome Gaiman who says,
no, Jerome Gaiman is a waste of time, George. He's a fraud. He's a total fraud. Jerome Gaiman is a fraud. He will just everything from this government and try to denigrate and just insult.
My point is,
a different thought.
So at the end of the day,
engage with Jerome.
At the end of the day, but even in the thread, I had a lot of people saying, "Oh, but the man can get married in Paris." No, he can't. No, he can't. That's my position.
Yes, that's your position. And I think in terms of the optics around that, it's not good for him.
You come from the 3rd poorest country in the world.
It's just like when people look at the salary structure.
Yes.
Abache making more than the U.S. speaker or the U.S. president pro tem. And then we're going to beg them. How can you have exorbitant salaries for your officials and your country has nothing, but then you go into beg these other people and you're trying
to give you help paying the same salaries?
It just, the optics, the people don't understand is how things look to rational people. That's optics. it make no sense for what we do and how we operate. We have to change that mindset, you know.
And so when you look at the fact that Gray is a member of the House of Representatives and the common Liberian who wakes up every day wondering where he's going to eat, who also knows that prior to becoming a member of the House of Representatives, Mr. Gray was just as destitute as he was.
Definitely.
Okay? You know what he's saying now? Why am I interested in having 10 buses? I just want to be in government because that's where we're going to make all the money.
Yep. That's the easy money and no
that's
question.
That's the easy money.
There's going to be no question.
So and so again, you will have people justifying it.
You know, so again, there's demand that the private sector takes care of Liberia. People ask, oh, what has Mr. Cummings done? You know, nobody asks, what has Mr. Boycott done? What has Mr. We have done? So the bar is a little different. Now, this person is asking, why has Cummings not created a private business? Mr. Cummings has. But people need to understand Mr. Cummings' investment is not just for the public because of sabotage, because of...
So, but let me ask this person, okay? Let's just use a numbers game. What is the rate of unemployment in Liberia? It's close to 80%.
Easily.
Okay? How many people, if Mr. Cummings created a business?
But Sam Jackson will come argue that they're vulnerably employed. The people who selling chicle on the street, they are employed.
Yeah.
That is
stupid. But if Mr. Cummings created a business that employed 500 people,
I say 5,000, sir.
How much of a dent would it put in the unemployment in Liberia? What this person who doesn't understand is that if you want private business to thrive,
create the
government has to be the enabler.
Create the
across the board. Do you know how many people can this guy tell me right now what the government's internal debt is? Maybe he doesn't even know what internal debt means.
No.
Internal debt means money that the government owes to people in Liberia who have provided goods and services. Those are private businesses.
We'll make it easier for him. Domestic debt.
The domestic debt. Those are private businesses who the government takes 2 years sometimes to pay.
And sometimes some of the business, the people go out of business because
they go out of business easily.
No turnaround in the operations.
No, they go out of business easily. So when you come and ask such a stupid question about why Mr. Cummings has not created any private business, my question to you is, what is the government's domestic debt and how many of those private businesses are paid on time? The Lebanese people, the reason they do most of the supplying to the government is because they can go 2 years without being paid because they build it into their pricing structure.
And beyond
the people of Liberia lose.
They also have float. They get money from outside the country.
Correct.
They're not dependent on money.
So you don't understand that when you ask such a question, it makes me understand that you don't even know how things work. If you want private industry to thrive, it's not going to be just Mr. Cummings. The people who sell carpet paper to the government, they need to be paid on time. The people who do catering for the government, those people employ Liberians. They need to be paid for the services that are rendered. But you don't understand that. You don't understand that.
So, you know, people take governance.
Look, let's go back to Dwalu. I don't think Dwalu appreciates that the things we are talking about here, as simple as they are radical. I don't think he appreciates that.
Well, when you say he doesn't,
What I'm saying is he doesn't appreciate. It's simple, but it's radical. Okay. What does he mean? How do I reconcile my statement about Liberians in the diaspora going home and looking for government jobs? Because you don't have a private sector. You don't have a private sector. So if you're going to ask, and this is one of the things I also said to Chris Dennis, if you're going to ask Liberians who are in their 40s and 50s to come to Liberia, there's no private sector to employ them. And this, but hold on, here's the other thing. Do you remember when Ghana wanted to send the people from the refugee camps back to Liberia? What did Ellen say to Ghana? She said, no, we can't absorb them. Where you went, Isaac?
No, I do remember. I was coming downstairs.
She said we can't absorb them. So let me ask these people. Do any of you have an idea what it would take for 20,000 families from the United States to return to Liberia? You can't provide housing for them. You can't provide transportation, even if they were willing to buy, even if they're willing to pay for the housing. You can't provide the housing.
And that's why this stuff has to be done in concert. Development cannot be, in a silo. And
you can't do it. If I told you right now I had 50 retired doctors to bring to Liberia, where are they going to live?
They can't just be accommodated easily.
You can't accommodate them easily.
And those numbers are there. Those doctors are there. Look, a diaspora program can be implemented that can boost our total healthcare system up. But we need some level of infrastructure,
We need infrastructure. People need a place to stay. If you say that every family that you're asking to come home will bring 2 children, if you bring 20,000 families home, you're talking about 40,000 children who need to go to school. You're talking about 40,000 children who need health care. Okay, so it's not just, you're just coming and let all of us sit down here and suffer. No, nobody's going to do that.
For some people, that's the badge of honor. If you have not,
nobody's going to do that.
No, nobody's stupid, and that's what
nobody's going to do that. If I got it from America right now and went to Liberia, I want my damn swimming pool, just like the way I got it here.
All right, Ivan Kutu wants to make a call. We'll try to get him on. Let me see. I think I did have the number here to call. So, Ivan, you can call that number and we'll put you on speaker and try to get you on. Because this has to be interactive. We have to get other people's ideas involved in the discussion. So it's not like we are dominating only our thoughts. We want other people to hear, because it's only in this marketplace of ideas, when different discussions are brought to bear, that we can really move this country forward. And sometimes these discussions will vet ideas. Sometimes some of us may think we have the best ideas, we're offering the right thing, but what happens by the time people test it a little bit and vet it, we realize those ideas are not adequate enough. So okay, my man is calling Dwalu. Let's hear him. Hey, Dwalu.
Hey, what's going on, brother? How you doing, Chase Formula?
You on air?
Dwalu, how you doing?
Yes,
you on the air? What's up?
Yes, I don't know if I did say that. What I was suggesting here is this. Obviously, it would make no sense to grab a bunch of people and just move to Liberia. There's not an infrastructure to even support that. My suggestion here was, we in the diaspora, I mean, you guys been at it for so many decades. I believe we're not doing enough. The issue here is, you said it so succinctly, Mr. Formula, that the people back home, because they are so hungry, they don't have the capacity in many instances to even fight the system. And it's true, I agree with that. But in order to change the system, who can eat 3 times a day? We have to do more. Not necessarily to moving home, but we have to push the issue. How else are we going to change the conditions in the country if we are not willing to push the issue? Now,
well, I'm in agreement with you on that one, Dwalu. I'm in total agreement with you on that.
Okay, so let's ask Dwalu about his own experience.
Well, my own experience.
No, you need to tell us of your experience because
Dwalu, your experience is integral to the whole process.
Somebody just asked. So let me tell you about this young man. Extremely enterprising young man. When Ellen took over, this is the fella that decided he was going to set up a sanitation company in Liberia. It was ripe. He went into Liberia. He took he shipped porta potties, portable toilets for people to use.
Thank you.
It could have been placed all over Monrovia. This is a private person now coming to do business in Liberia. In a country that desperately needed it, his business failed. Explain that to me. You know why it failed? Because the government would have been the #1 purchaser of those goods and services, and the government was not willing to pay him to provide those goods and services. So if you are asking now, why isn't Mr. Cummings opening business? Maybe your idea of Mr. Cummings opening a business is to just stand on the sidewalk and give people money every day. But when you talk about opening a business, you talk about making an investment, getting paid for that investment, and paying your employees and expanding your business.
And profiting.
Okay, and profiting. So the business that this young man wanted to open, not only would it have led to better sanitation, it would have eventually become part of the whole trash collection system in Liberia and all of that stuff.
I vetted what Dwalu has brought to the table.
Nobody gave him the time of day, and all they had to do was to say, for 2 years, even 3 years, because you made this initial investment, we're going to give you an exclusive contract. After 3 years, we open it to the market. Let me tell you a little story.
You probably wanted 25 or 30% of Dwalu business, but
let me tell you the little story.
Let Dwalu come in, George. Hold on. Yeah, Dwalu.
You know, you guys are, like we say back home, senior brothers. I agree with you entirely. There was hellish. Well, I did it for 10 years. I had 27 employees. This thing was growing. The issue began that the government realized, because there was potential growth in this thing, and I was making sometimes $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month. The government decided to compete against me directly because they felt I was not bringing people on board, or quote unquote, I did not want to play ball. But my issue was, I was the only person trying to fight this. And I know you guys have done it so long, and whether you believe it or not, Mr. Formula, we aspire to what you guys have done in the country, and I'm fully aware of this. But it pains me knowing that we have solutions out there. They cannot come to bear because the leadership will not allow it in the country. We have to find an alternative. You talk about divvying up Liberia in a way where there are subdivisions of the country and they can be administered independently. And I agree with that because we have to find these solutions. But my issue that I've been wrestling with, Mr. Formula, how do we get people to vote right if they're hungry? We're in the diaspora. What can we do?
So again,
let him get a recommendation, George. Let him get a chance.
And one recommendation I've given is something called the $1 billion challenge, because I firmly believe that we in the diaspora, we have that window into possibly changing Liberia, like the Israelis have done, that other countries around the world have done, because we have to do more. I honestly talking is the beginning portion of it, but a lot more has to be done. I don't know, and I'm not going to tell you I know all the solution, but I know there's something out there. We have to do something. Because the conditions are.
But tell us about the challenge. Tell us about the challenge before George comes in.
Well, what the challenge is, I mean, people can Google the paper. It's called Liberia $1 billion challenge. We in the diaspora, we have approximately 1.5, maybe 1.2 million Liberians living in the diaspora. My whole suggestion was, we set up a venture capitalist firm here in the U.S. Everything will be under U.S. law. The intention is to raise nothing more than $1,000 for each Liberian in the diaspora. Everything will be incorporated in the U.S. because we have to influence the issues in Liberia. Now, let's assume we raise $1 billion, minimally $1 billion. We go into Liberia, for example. Let's say we take over LAC and we build a national grid for the system. Or let's say we take over the coastal highway and then we tour these roads, or we start a rice production in the country. Once we start doing that, we can heavily influence the political decisions in the country.
That's not far from a Liberia, diaspora investment fund kind of concept. We even got to get to 1 billion. We don't even have to get to 1 billion.
Guess what?
Yeah.
You still need the approval of government.
Oh, no question. You need government.
Okay.
But the fact that you got numbers, George, the fact that you got numbers, that you got a significant number of Liberians pushing this, it pressures government. Because let's say if you got 1,000 Liberians who have $1,000, that's $1 million to start some kind of business.
That's $1 million.
Yes, you can start to concentrate the import-export business with $1 million investment. You can start that. And
so a couple of things have to.
If you got
Isaac,
5 or 6 other Liberians who are,
there are a couple of things that have to happen. Okay, for me, there are a couple of things that have to happen.
Okay.
The first thing that has to happen is the government of Liberia needs to commit to respect the labor laws in Liberia, because there are certain carve-outs in commerce and labor that should be exclusively for Liberians.
Right, but as a liberalization law, we agree with you. They got to respect that.
You can't have Chinese people making waiter market in Liberia. You can't have Chinese people doing retail business in Liberia. When you go to Ghana, you don't see that. So when Ghanaians say we're going to raise $1 million to go and do a certain type of business,
they know they got rights to that.
They know that business is protected for them. And Dwalu, like I said, so my thing is, even in the business you went ahead and did, I don't believe it was actually a Liberian who did it. It was the government who did it. The government just encouraged. Once they saw your money coming in, they just say, you know what? We can do this. We government official, we can do this anymore. We can do it with government money, and we'll give ourselves all the contracts. So at the end of the day, I understand what you are saying, Dwalu, and I agree with that principle. We have to have a commitment from the government.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you so much, guys.
All right. Thank you, Dwalu. So, folks, as you can see, and that's why I really commend Dwalu for the level of optimism and desire he still has for Liberia after having gone through all the headaches. And even in this current government, okay, I've seen some of the proposals that Dwalu has made. It would have been very helpful. The whole trash thing we're talking about, it would not even be existing if Dwalu were given the opportunity to operate without them having to impose their desire for certain percentages in his business. And that's the greed. Public officials take their positions as entitlement to get wealth rather than to help move the country forward. So until the Liberian people, who will be the most beneficiaries of an open investment environment, can stand up and say, look, the fact that after 5 years, because forget about Ellen, that time gone. Today, the fact that after nearly 5 years, you can show us the jobs you have created to say we compare with the promise you made of 10,000 or 20,000, whatever amount of jobs on an annual basis, that you can't do that. And we would never get to that 100,000 jobs in this time frame, except the government does something revolutionary in the agricultural space. That's the only opportunity for mass job creation in the country. And the time frame to build that separate agricultural infrastructure, minimum is about 2 to 3 years. So who knows if they can achieve that? They can share the vision maybe, but to achieve that, difficult.
Hey, Isaac, just mute you.
Yeah, George, mute yourself, or let me mute you. So the work is huge. The work is huge, and we as Liberians, we have to wake up. Dwalu called to the folks in the diaspora is a necessary call. But it's a two-way call to me. You don't want to just rush for the investment. It's about the sensitization, getting people aware what these possibilities are. What we as Liberians in the diaspora, how can we work with you Liberians on the ground? What is that integration process? What are the win-win situations there? How can we identify the serious young people who are trying to do business, the market women, the petty traders who are trying to make things happen but can't happen? How can we move them to say, okay, you know what? You go be importer for all the lapa. You go be importer for this, and work through that person to improve the system for Liberians to be a part of this. How can we collectively identify all those areas of Liberianization that are supposed to be for Liberians only, that are being, occupied by foreigners? How can we push government to move away from that? I believe George is back. George,
I'm
back. Back?
Yeah.
Yes. How can we mobilize people, sensitize them, that we can gain that level of agency, that we can demand that government takes actions? So it's not only about just public, it's about the people.
Let's just explain to these people, even if you take a business like Lone Star. How did Lone Star start? Lone Star was granted a monopoly by the Taylor government. Okay.
And why?
In exchange for them owning parts of Lone Star.
Exactly.
Okay. And if anybody wants to challenge that, I'm willing to tell you that the first law that Judy Bryant signed was to make it so that Lone Star was no longer a monopoly. And that's when Cellcom came into being.
True.
All right. So what we are talking about here, if you look at that, there are many Liberians who became wealthy from the creation of Lone Star, whether you believe it was illegal or not, but because the government blocked out that space for them to be in it for at least the 3 or 4 years they were in it.
Yes.
So when you are asking Liberians to leave America, take their retirement money and come to Liberia, and then they have, as soon as they establish a business, and it seems as if that business is going to be successful, then government officials will then cut them out of the contracts. As a matter of fact, listen, there was one guy who did the same thing with an insurance contract who used to work at the Ministry of Finance. Government was paying insurance for government workers, and he cut out the insurance company by setting up his own insurance company so that the government was paying him directly. So if somebody has given up their livelihood to come to Liberia, listen, this is what I'm willing to say to everybody. All right? From George Fambule, me, I am not prepared to come to Liberia and suffer.
What is the point of suffering? People don't
not prepared. And guess what?
To be good.
And guess what? I will not do it. When I left this conversation just now, that was the guy who repairs the light on my swimming pool. The light didn't come on last night. He does the maintenance. He comes in every other week.
Of light glimmering.
So I told him, I went out there and told him when he repairs the light, he should set it so that it comes on from 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock because it doesn't get dark until 8 o'clock. Right now, it goes from 7 to 10. Okay, but at the end of the day, my point is, I'm not coming to Liberia to live without running water, to live without air conditioning, to live without flushing toilets. I'm not. But in the meantime, if I do want to come to Liberia, I want to be in a situation where we can elevate the lives of Liberian people so that they too can have a better standard. As opposed to saying, come, let's all of us sit down here and suffer together.
Yeah, there are two comments.
See, I don't need to go to Paris to get married.
I know, right? Akaras did. So, right. Raz Shilo, who made a previous comment, I think I shared, he says another one. All of you Liberian politicians are a bunch of hypocrites. when you get in power, you do the same damn wrong things your predecessors did to a large extent.
Okay, but Raz
is right. But not everybody talking is a politician.
Raz, I don't want to be a politician.
That's what
I don't want to be a politician. So your basic assumption is wrong. Guess what? I came to America and I'm a foreigner. Okay? And this country, because of the way it's structured, allowed me to simply have an equal playing field. That's all I ask for.
Hold on. No, Josh. Don't get the impression that it's really equal. It's not equal. But because of your own industriousness, your own effort, you still broke through. You still made things happen. So America is not level like we wanted to say.
The biggest payer of services,
the government,
that from us is the federal government.
Yes.
Okay. They pay 70% of the business we do. Guess what? There has not been a single federal government official who has come to me and said,
give me something.
The only way we will continue to pay you is if you let us have 25% of your business.
Right.
Okay. Everybody, listen, I strongly believe that if Liberia is going to develop, it's going to be developed based on the private sector. However, the government must be instrumental in creating the environment for private businesses to thrive.
And
okay, so that's what we're fighting. That's what my position is. I never want to be in government. Period.
There are many people who speak and don't want to be in government. Look, if the opportunity was there's no reason. When I was growing up, I was never thinking about being in government. I started off at 17 working at Chase Manhattan Bank in the private sector.
So people talk about, oh yeah, the person want. Let me tell you something, okay? You know what I want to do when I retire in 2 or 3 years?
Tell us.
I want to travel for about 4, 5, 6 months at a time. Nobody who wants to be in government wants to do that. Wants to have the freedom of movement, and I don't care for it. Okay? I've already, like I said, I've been to Paris twice. I didn't get married there, but hell, I've still been to Paris.
I'm going to
Paris. But at the end of the day, the assumption that everybody wants to be in government, you miss the point. What we are talking about is creating a private environment so that private businesses thrive.
Especially Liberian businesses. That's important. Right. That makes the biggest difference. So Derek Poor says, Dwalu sounds good speaking the truth, but yes, suppose boycott. An almost 80 years old man. So, there's something to that in terms of what people see in boycott. I'm not sure that Dwalu supports boycott. Maybe he does. I don't know. I know he's on a show with what a guy name. I can't remember the young man's name, but he totally supports boycott. So maybe that's the assumption. But Dwalu himself has to say he's opposed boycott before I believe it. But but
here's my thing. I don't have a problem with Dwalu supporting boycott. I don't. If we agree that the things that need to be done for business need to be done, when we get to the point where people are actually campaigning actively, then he will make his case why he thinks boycott is better. Okay? Democracy is a popularity contest.
And that's largely the case because the voters sometimes are not informed. It's about who they know, who they vote for, or who they feel.
It's a popularity contest,
or who they have interest in, and maybe.
I will tell you why I will not support boycott. If he was the only candidate running, he's too old for Liberia.
Totally.
Don't tell me about Joe Biden in America. Joe Biden has the entire government infrastructure in America that's already built and working.
Right.
You don't have that in Liberia. You're putting the burden on an 80-year-old man to do that when you know it's not there.
And all the pieces in government are not easy.
Not easy.
And then for you to be able to get all the different things that coming at you in this process.
When Joe Biden says he's going to send $40 billion worth of weapons to Ukraine, all he has to do is sign a piece of paper, and in 3 months, Ukraine gets $40 billion worth of weapons. You know why? Because they have those systems in place.
Right. The entire logistics around it.
If the president of Liberia, Mr. Boakai, decided that he wanted to import 1,000 cars to Liberia, he can't do it because the system's not there. So don't tell me that Joe Biden 80 years old. Listen, when it comes to the rest of the world, do not compare Liberia to any other country.
We want to be
you
like
are the third poorest country in the world. Yes. You have no infrastructure. You have no sanitation. You have no electricity. You have no systems. So to ask somebody at 80 years old to come and do all of those things, it's too much.
And especially somebody who has not really seen it done differently, who had the opportunity to work in administration and prove something different and never did. So I just don't see how Boakai can move the needle. I mean, I believe that Boakai could be better than we are, but I don't see how he, as a leader, is a better choice among the candidates.
So what is his vision for Liberia?
At this point, he has
What is his vision?
None. At this point.
Okay, so I always do this to those of you who believe in the good book. Okay? When God was talking to, I believe it was Abraham, he said...
The Brendan Bush discussion?
No. He said, your old men will dream dreams, and your young men will see visions. What I took from that message is that when you're dreaming, you are asleep.
And he does that.
When you are seeing a vision, you are wide awake. The Bible tells you that. You are seeing something in real time. And it specifically says the visions that they're going to give you are going to be of the future, but you're going to be wide awake. It doesn't fall on old men to have these visions. It falls on young men because they are the ones who can see it executed. So even in your Bible, if you are a believer, it tells you that it's the youth that's going to get you there. There is no reason why you got people who are graduating from college today who are competing for government positions with people who held those government positions 40 years ago.
I mean, it's incredible, and it's something that's accepted, and that's what's just amazing. That
let me ask you this: what is Toga Vakintash's role in the government right now?
Well, he was offered to go to the GCC, I think the Governance Commission, the GC, the Governance Commission, and he did not accept the appointment. So he has no role in government, I don't believe.
So let me ask you this. Are you telling me that in the last 40 years that this man has been involved in the government of Liberia, that of all the Liberians everywhere in the world, they believe that he's the best person to appoint
but George, you just
to the Governance Commission?
You just made a very false construct around his selection. You say all the Liberians in the world. The search process is very, very limited. There should be no reason why people who have never even worked in anywhere should be the only people bringing people to the tables for these opportunities. No.
Right.
They should open it up. They don't
but
know.
The fact that you're bringing a man who was once foreign minister, who has been in government for 40 years, how are you going to get new ideas? How? If you're spinning over the same people.
Butts in the seats. It's not about new idea, new visions. They don't embrace it. And the thing is, the key people in this government are young people. And, you know, sometimes you think people travel, people live in different countries, they get exposure. You find out the hard way. That's not true. If people in their little closet in whatever country they at.
Well, you know, there's always the lady who was appointed to be maritime person, deputy at maritime.
I know, right?
You know, I mean,
Josh,
that was ridiculous.
But it's even worse because the guy who was appointed is still supposed to come before the Senate. The guy who was appointed to head the airport.
But this lady, no. But this lady literally said at her confirmation hearing that the expertise she brought to be deputy managing director was the fact that she was an intern.
Yep.
So let me give you an example. Many of the people on here today don't know that LPRC once actually ran a refinery in Gardnersville. An actual refinery where they refined crude oil. And I used to work at LPRC, vacation job, every 3 months. So what this lady was saying is that from working my vacation job at LPRC,
you could run.
I was qualified to be the deputy managing director of LPRC. I mean, you know, the fact that she was so shameless, it didn't even register to her. But there's a bigger problem. It didn't register to McGill. It didn't register to Mr. Weah.
George,
why do these people think
somebody's a nurse or somebody's a doctor? They assume that they can be a hospital administrator or whole healthcare system administrator. If somebody was a compliance analyst or somebody worked in a financial institution somewhere, they feel they can run a financial institution. That's the Dunning-Kruger effect that you have always talked about. People have these biases that they think they can do stuff simply because they are in the presence of other people who have done it or can do it. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that until people can realize that and know that.
But it almost seems as if Mr. Weah places no value on people who have adequate credentials.
No, he doesn't. He shy away from them. That's been seen.
Because to take somebody, and even the school she said she went to in Kenya, if you go to the school's website, you will see that even the people in Kenya, the Kenyan government says this is an effed up school.
Wow.
Okay. The only thing you need to be admitted to that school is you need to have a pulse. I'm dead serious. You just need to be breathing.
Wow. They
accept dropouts. They accept anybody.
No person left behind.
No person left behind.
So, Banda, this is my most profound Liberian thing. When you don't know, you don't know. I believe that's one of the most profound statements ever among Liberians.
Yeah, but when you also don't want to know, you won't know.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's so many resources there for people to get, but you don't just get to the point where you can run an organization. It doesn't happen that way. And until our people can understand that, especially those who are making appointments today, until they can understand that challenge, we are getting nowhere, you know? There's another issue. Oh, no. I didn't really want kind of knock on Boyka. It was a different thought from somebody about people criticizing, okay, there's nothing wrong with people having talk shows. It's about what the content is, what the substance is. And I don't know what this person's definition of better things to do or what contribute to Liberia means, but contribution comes in many forms. And sometimes even the people who can financially and physically contribute to Liberia, they are inhibited from contributing. And until we can have a real open society where participation is based on all the rights you have and nothing is suppressed or curtailed, we have this.
But let me ask him this. What exactly does he mean they need to find better things to do?
Exactly.
No, I want him let him come on.
He will not
Let
come
him
on.
come on and answer the question.
Tipla pa.
Find better things to do. Tell me what the better things to tell me what you think I should be doing with my life that's better than what I'm doing now.
He can. Because he doesn't even know what your life is. That's the
right.
thing.
He can see.
No, he playing blind to be way behind you.
He can see.
So Tipla, you can't decide for people what they do. No. If we're functioning properly as a government, as a country, a lot of these discussions will be moot. Who are listening to somebody who criticizing a system that is working, that is benefiting the majority of the people? There's nobody. But when you have situations like we have, where a significant portion of the population, unfortunately, are uneducated, are not critical thinkers, are depending on less than $1 a day to survive, we can't move this country forward. So we have to keep talking until those who are holding the key responsibility.
I want this man to tell me what he says the better things to do are. Tell me, what do you think I could be doing right now that's better than what I'm doing? Because right now in America, I run a business and I take an hour to 90 minutes every week to try to share knowledge with people in Liberia. Tell me what you think I could be doing when that's better.
He can, George. We didn't waste time for him, but I think, what time do we come on? Some minutes to 2, like 1:30, 1:40? Yeah.
Yeah.
So beyond like an hour and a half, I think we've shared enough for the day. So any thoughts in closing? Any thoughts?
No, my thing is, going in with this last person, Tepla, you people should not be so obstinate when people are trying to give you something that's free. Okay? What I'm trying to do here is to give you some level of enlightenment so that you understand how things work. I've always said that if I could afford it, I would bring 1,000 Liberians to America every year and have them stay here for 6 weeks so they can see a different world. But it almost seems as if there are those people who are so vested in the way things are in Liberia, where anytime you try to expose them to new ideas, their response is, you guys have nothing to do in America. People don't live in America with nothing to do. And also, I see my man Zach on the on the thread. Zach, my man, you see, I took my glasses the other day and I fell asleep with them in the bed, and I had to get the damn hingeless things replaced. And the person I thought about was you. I said, when I grow up, I want to be just like Zach, and I will have the same 4-hole rimless glasses he got.
Wonderful. So, folks, it's been a good time. This discussion, the exchanges from people have been interesting. The comments have been interesting. We really appreciate the participation. We're still looking forward to getting on the radio in Liberia to be able to speak to a wider audience. It's been challenging getting on a show or getting in a space, but we'll continue to push and we'll continue to share. So the more you can share some of these discussions with folks, share the link, invite them, let them know about it, the more the word will be out. And we embrace your comments. We embrace your participation in this. It's just not about us. It's about how can we collectively as a people be able to move our country forward. A lot of people definitely love Liberia and people love it in different ways, but there are those people who are undermining the progress of Liberia by their actions in leadership or by their support and complicity of bad governance. So to the extent that we can collectively want a better government. We can teach our people what it is to be a responsible citizen, what the social contract is, what government functions should be, what the expectations should be when government operates on their behalf. All of those things are critical things to improving our democracy. So let's keep trying to work. Let's keep having these conversations. They are helpful. And until we can enlighten people's minds that they can be able to participate in the governance of the country effectively, until our people who control our economy are able to get more people involved in this economy, that there can be a good churn in the economy, a good virtuous cycle of investment, of profit, of job creation, of an economy growing, we'll keep the pressure up and we'll keep talking. So we thank you and we look forward to next week. But don't forget, Friday should be the weekend review, but I may be going to the CWA convention in Atlanta, so I may be traveling at that time. We'll let you know what time the weekend review will come on. Thank you. Peace. Thank you for watching.